Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. Gone with the Wind wasn't just Hollywood's most beloved epic, it was one of cinema's most chaotic and controversial disasters masquerading as prestige filmmaking. Behind the sweeping romance and burning Atlanta lay a production riddled with firings, breakdowns, segregated premieres, and studio warfare that makes today's Hollywood drama look like child's play. Before casting Vivien Leigh in the role, producer David O. Selznick's team interviewed close to 2,400 women and screen-tested 31 of them. 19 days after the shooting began, however, Selznick fired George Cukor because they disagreed on how filming should proceed. Over 10 acres of the studio backlot were used for the burning of the Atlanta scene, with controlled fires consuming sets while actors performed their roles amidst the chaos. We're about to uncover 20 weird facts about Gone with the Wind that reveal the absolute madness behind America's most famous film. From nervous breakdowns on set to segregated Oscar ceremonies, from nationwide casting searches that spiraled out of control to the shocking truth about how Hollywood's first Black Oscar winner was treated at her own awards ceremony. Plus, stick around for our bonus fact, a revelation so wild it'll change how you see the movie's most famous line forever. Buckle up, this is going to get messy. The search for Scarlett O'Hara became America's biggest media circus. The producers went all out with a nationwide casting call that felt more like a presidential campaign than a movie audition process. They screened more than 1,400 women for the role of Scarlett O'Hara, but what audiences didn't know was the sheer madness this created. Selznick received thousands of letters from women proclaiming themselves to be his Scarlett. 2,400 unknowns were interviewed at a cost of $100,000. Department stores held Scarlett O'Hara contests. Women dyed their hair, practiced Southern accents, and some even traveled cross-country with nothing but dreams and desperation. The search lasted 2 full years and nearly bankrupted the production before they'd even started filming. It wasn't casting, it was cultural hysteria. Vivien Leigh got the role through pure stalking. In February 1938, Leigh asked Myron that she be considered to play the part of Scarlett O'Hara. David O. Selznick watched her performances that month in Fire Over England and A Yank at Oxford and thought that she was excellent, but in no way a possible Scarlett because she was too British. Out of the hundreds of ballots cast, Leigh received just 1 vote. The British actress wasn't well known in the United States, having appeared in less than 10 movies before she won the role of Scarlett. But Leigh didn't give up. She followed Selznick to parties, showed up uninvited to script readings, and basically made herself impossible to ignore. Her persistence bordered on harassment, but it worked. Sometimes the squeaky wheel doesn't just get the grease, it gets the role of a lifetime. They started filming without a leading lady. Filming began on December 10, 1938, with the burning of Atlanta scene. Although O'Hara still hadn't been cast, Selznick was so convinced he'd find his perfect Scarlett that he began production with the most expensive scene in the movie, and no one to star in it. Over 10 acres of the studio backlot were used for the scene, with controlled fires consuming sets while actors performed their roles amidst the chaos. Stunt doubles and stand-ins performed in long shots, while real flames consumed elaborate sets. It was filmmaking madness, burning money, and sets while hoping their star would materialize from thin air. The gamble paid off, but barely. The director got fired after 19 days. Cukor spent 2 years on the project and was actively involved in casting the film and developing major characters. 19 days after the shooting began, however, Selznick fired Cukor because they disagreed on how filming should proceed. George Cukor wasn't just dismissed, he was exiled from his own creation. The official reason was creative differences, but rumors swirled about Cukor's sexuality and conflicts with Clark Gable. What audiences didn't realize was that Cukor had shaped every major character, coached the actors, and essentially designed the film's entire vision. When he was fired, it was like ripping the heart out of a living organism. Production never truly recovered from this seismic disruption. Victor Fleming had a complete nervous breakdown. Victor Fleming, who replaced Cukor, couldn't handle the pressure. The relentless schedule, Selznick's constant interference, and the weight of salvaging Hollywood's most expensive production pushed him to his breaking point. Fleming collapsed on set, suffering what would today be recognized as severe burnout and anxiety. He took a month off, leaving the production rudderless. Sam Wood stepped in to direct portions of the film, meaning Gone with the Wind was actually directed by 3 different men. Fleming's breakdown was kept secret from the press, but cast and crew witnessed him literally falling apart under the immense pressure. Clark Gable's breath problem nearly derailed romance scenes. Vivien Leigh absolutely hated kissing Clark Gable, and it wasn't about chemistry. Gable suffered from severe dental problems and chronic bad breath that made intimate scenes torture for his co-stars. Vivien Leigh privately complained to friends about the ordeal of romantic scenes, sometimes requiring multiple takes because she couldn't hide her revulsion. The crew kept mouthwash on standby, and Leigh would discreetly turn her head during close-ups to avoid the worst of it. Hollywood's greatest romantic leading man was physically repulsive to kiss. The magic of cinema required Leigh to be a consummate actress, even in her most intimate moment. The film cost more than some countries' annual budgets. Sources at the time put the estimated production costs at $3.85 million, making it the second most expensive film made up to that point, with only Ben-Hur 1925 having cost more. But inflation tells the real story. That's equivalent to over $75 million today. For context, entire small nations had smaller annual budgets than this single movie. The production consumed resources like a military campaign, employing over 2,400 people and using more than 1 million feet of Technicolor film stock. Producer David O. Selznick had acquired the film rights to Mitchell's novel in July 1936 for $50,000, a record amount at the time, to an unknown author for her first novel, causing some to label the film Selznick's folly. The financial risk was so enormous that it bordered on insanity. Katharine Hepburn's audition was pure ego destruction. Katharine Hepburn, who went so far as to demand an appointment with producer David O. Selznick and saying, "I am Scarlett O'Hara, the role is practically written for me." Selznick replied rather bluntly, "I can't imagine Rhett Butler chasing you for 12 years. This wasn't just rejection, it was character assassination." Hepburn, one of Hollywood's biggest stars, walked into that meeting expecting to walk out with the role. Instead, she was psychologically demolished by Selznick's brutal honesty. The exchange became Hollywood legend, proving that even established stars weren't safe from the producer's savage tongue. Hepburn never publicly spoke about the humiliation, but those present said she left the office looking shattered. The Scarlett O'Hara diet nearly killed Vivien Leigh. To maintain Scarlett's 18-inch waist, Vivien Leigh underwent a punishing regimen that would horrify modern audiences. She consumed primarily coffee, cigarettes, and amphetamines, eating 1 small meal per day during the grueling 7-month shoot. The corsets were so tight that they left permanent marks on her torso. Leigh would sometimes faint between takes from lack of nutrition and oxygen restriction. Studio doctors monitored her pulse daily, fearing she might collapse during major scenes. The physical toll was devastating. Leigh's health never fully recovered, and many believe this extreme regimen contributed to her later mental health struggles. Beauty standards in 1939 Hollywood were literally life-threatening. The damn controversy was completely manufactured. Go ahead and like and subscribe because this next revelation will blow your mind about Hollywood's greatest marketing stunt. Although legend persists that the Hays office fined Selznick $5,000 for using the word damn in Butler's exit line, this was pure publicity manipulation. Selznick knew exactly what he was doing when he fought for that single curse word. The controversy generated millions of dollars in free publicity, with newspapers nationwide debating whether audiences should hear such shocking language. The Motion Picture Association actually approved the line months before release, but Selznick continued promoting the fake controversy. It was genius marketing disguised as artistic integrity, proving that manufactured outrage sold tickets long before social media existed. Hattie McDaniel couldn't attend her own movie's premiere. The 12th Academy Awards took place at Coconut Grove Restaurant of the Ambassador Hotel, a segregated venue where McDaniel's career was defined by contradictions, from performing in whiteface early on to accounts that her refusal to utter the N-word meant it never made it on screen in Gone with the Wind. McDaniel, who played Mammy, was barred from the film's Atlanta premiere due to Georgia's Jim Crow laws. The irony was devastating. She couldn't watch her own groundbreaking performance in the city where her character lived. When she finally won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress, becoming the first Black performer to win an Academy Award, she was seated at a segregated table in the back of the room, separated from her white co-stars. Hollywood celebrated her talent while simultaneously enforcing its racist hierarchy. The burning of Atlanta almost burned down Hollywood. The film's most spectacular sequence nearly became an actual disaster. Wind conditions on the night of filming were dangerous, and sparks from the controlled fires began igniting real buildings on the MGM lot. Fire departments from 3 counties were on standby as flames reached heights of over 200 feet. Several crew members suffered burns, and one stuntman was hospitalized after his clothes caught fire. The heat was so intense that camera equipment warped and film stock literally melted in some cameras. Over 10 acres of the studio backlot were used for the scene, with controlled fires consuming sets while actors performed their roles amidst the chaos. What looks like movie magic was actually controlled catastrophe, one gust of wind away from genuine tragedy. Leslie Howard despised everything about the production. Leslie Howard, who played Ashley Wilkes, called the film terrible and openly mocked it during production. He believed the story was racist propaganda and was embarrassed to be associated with it. Howard only took the role because his contract with Selznick included the right to produce and star in other films he actually wanted to make. He spent the entire shoot complaining about the script, the schedule, and what he saw as the film's moral failings. His disdain is visible on screen. Ashley's weakness isn't just character choice, it's Howard's genuine disgust bleeding through his performance. He refused to promote the film and never spoke positively about it publicly. Olivia de Havilland's real-life drama inspired Melanie. De Havilland's portrayal of the saintly Melanie was informed by her own brutal experiences with Hollywood's studio system. During filming, she was engaged in a vicious legal battle with Warner Brothers that would eventually break the studio system's stranglehold on actors. Her gentle performance masked the fierce warrior fighting for actors' rights in real courtrooms. The contrast between her on-screen sweetness and off-screen legal warfare created a fascinating tension. She channeled her real frustration with being trapped and controlled into Melanie's quiet strength. De Havilland later said playing Melanie taught her that true power often looks like submission, a lesson she used to destroy the studio system forever. The film's racism caused protests before anyone saw it. African-American newspapers and civil rights organizations organized boycotts before the film even premiered, correctly predicting its romanticized view of slavery would be harmful. The NAACP published detailed analyses of the novel's racism and warned that the film would perpetuate dangerous stereotypes. While many Black people were happy over McDaniel's personal victory, they also viewed it as bittersweet. They believed Gone with the Wind celebrated the slave system and condemned the forces that destroyed it. These protests were largely ignored by mainstream media, but they represented early organized resistance to Hollywood's racist narratives. The Black press correctly identified the film's propaganda elements, proving that contemporary critics understood its harmful impact from the beginning. Margaret Mitchell hated the movie version of her book. The author who created Scarlett O'Hara despised how Hollywood adapted her work. Mitchell felt the film oversimplified her complex characters and turned her psychological drama into a shallow romance. She was particularly upset by changes to Scarlett's character, believing Vivien Leigh's portrayal was too manipulative and lost the character's vulnerability. Mitchell refused most publicity appearances and gave only a handful of interviews about the adaptation. She privately told friends that seeing her characters on screen felt like watching strangers wear my children's faces. The author's disappointment was kept secret to protect the film's success, but she never reconciled with Hollywood's version of her story. The Technicolor process nearly poisoned the cast. Early Technicolor required massive amounts of lighting that generated dangerous heat and toxic fumes. The lights burned so hot they caused makeup to literally melt off actors' faces, requiring constant touch-ups. Worse, the chemical processes used in Technicolor film development released harmful vapors that made the cast and crew sick. Vivien Leigh developed chronic respiratory problems during filming that doctors linked to extended exposure to the lighting setup. Several crew members were hospitalized with chemical burns and lung irritation. The beautiful colors audiences loved were achieved through processes that were slowly poisoning everyone involved. Modern safety standards would have shut down the production immediately. Clark Gable nearly died in a horseback riding accident. During a crucial scene where Rhett attempts to win back Scarlett, Gable's horse bolted and threw him violently to the ground. He suffered a severe concussion and was unconscious for several minutes. Doctors wanted to hospitalize him, but Gable insisted on continuing to work. For the remainder of filming, he suffered from persistent headaches and memory problems that affected his performance. Some of Rhett's more subdued moments in the film's final act weren't acting choices. They were the result of Gable's brain injury. The accident was covered up to avoid insurance complications and schedule delays. Modern audiences are actually watching an actor with a traumatic brain injury trying to complete his performance. The film's success destroyed several careers. Success can be more dangerous than failure, and Gone with the Wind proved it. Several supporting actors became so associated with their roles that they couldn't find other work. Butterfly McQueen, who played Prissy, was typecast in demeaning roles for the rest of her career and eventually left Hollywood in frustration. The film's massive success created unrealistic expectations for future projects that no one could meet. Even Vivien Leigh struggled to find roles that didn't trade on her Scarlett O'Hara fame. The movie's cultural dominance became a prison for many who created it, trapping them in characters they could never escape. Their greatest triumph became their professional death sentence. David O. Selznick never made another hit. The producer who created cinema's most successful film spent the rest of his career chasing that same lightning. Every subsequent project was measured against Gone with the Wind's impossible standard. Selznick became obsessed with recreating his masterpiece, pouring fortunes into elaborate productions that failed to capture audiences' imagination. He died bitter and largely forgotten, unable to accept that he had achieved something that couldn't be repeated. The film's success destroyed his ability to create anything else meaningful. He became Hollywood's most tragic figure, a man killed by his own triumph, forever haunted by the perfection he achieved once and could never find again. Bonus fact: here's the revelation that changes everything. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn was added during post-production months after principal photography wrapped. Clark Gable had already moved on to other projects when he was called back for this single-line reading. The original ending had Rhett leaving silently, but test audiences found it unsatisfying. Selznick wrote the line himself in desperation, trying to give audiences the closure they demanded. The most quoted movie line in history was basically an afterthought, a producer's panic decision that accidentally created cinema immortality. Everything you thought you knew about Hollywood's most famous exit was wrong. Gone with the Wind remains cinema's most beautiful lie, a testament to the power of storytelling and the danger of nostalgia. Behind its sweeping romance and epic scope lay one of Hollywood's most chaotic productions, filled with nervous breakdowns, racial controversy, and creative warfare that nearly destroyed everyone involved. The film that taught America to romanticize the past was itself built on secrets, suffering, and the kind of organized madness that only Hollywood could orchestrate. Perhaps that's fitting for a story about a world that never really existed, created by people who sacrificed everything to make it feel real. What other Hollywood classics are hiding dark secrets behind their golden facades? Let us know in the comments, and remember, tomorrow is another day to discover the truth behind the magic. Frankly, my dear, now you know what really happened.
I can't let him go. I can't. There must be some way to bring him.